Dr. Elias Vera had spent most of his life staring at the stars, searching for answers that seemed just out of reach. His small, cluttered lab was tucked away in a remote corner of Earth's northern hemisphere, surrounded by snow-covered mountains and endless silence. It wasn't much, but it was enough for him. A man who preferred equations over people, science over sentiment. Since losing his wife to illness 2 years ago, he buried himself in work, trying to fill the void with discovery. On this particular evening, however, something extraordinary happened. Elias stood hunched over an ancient artifact he'd recently unearthed during one of his research expeditions into Earth's crust. The object looked otherworldly, smooth, black, and covered in faintly glowing symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. He didn't know what it was or where it came from, but its energy readings were unlike anything recorded before. Curiosity got the better of him. As he adjusted the dials on his quantum communication device, attempting to sync it with the artifact's strange frequencies, a sudden surge of power coursed through the room. The lights flickered violently. Sparks flew from the equipment. And then, everything went still. For a moment, Elias thought he'd destroyed the artifact, and maybe himself along with it. But as the smoke cleared, he realized something far stranger had occurred. Standing in the center of his lab was a figure unlike any human he'd ever seen. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver under the dim light. Her armor gleamed with intricate patterns etched in gold, and her piercing green eyes seemed to look straight through him. In one hand, she held a weapon that hummed softly, ready to strike if needed. "You called me human," she said, her voice calm yet commanding. There was no anger in her tone, only certainty. Elias stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a pile of papers scattered across the floor. I didn't call anyone," he stammered, his heart pounding. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" She tilted her head slightly, studying him as though he were some curious insect. "I am Caliph Eris, warrior of the Zenthari." She paused, gesturing toward the artifact now lying dormant on the table. "Your actions activated a beacon bound to my order. You summoned me." Summoned her? That couldn't be right. Elias shook his head, trying to make sense of her words. "This is impossible. I'm just a scientist. I don't even know what that thing is." Caliph stepped closer, her movements fluid and deliberate. "It matters not whether you understand. The bond has been forged. By tampering with forces beyond your comprehension, you have tied yourself, and your species, to obligations greater than you can imagine." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. Obligations. What did she mean? Before he could ask, Caliph continued. "The Zenthari protect the balance of existence. We guard against chaos, and those who seek to disrupt harmony among the stars. Your kind, you are reckless, destructive. Yet here we stand, connected by fate, or perhaps error." Her words hung heavy in the air. For all his intelligence, Elias felt utterly powerless. This alien woman spoke of concepts he barely grasped, let alone controlled. Still, there was something about her presence that demanded respect. Despite his fear, he found himself wanting to listen, to learn. Before they could say more, alarms blared outside the lab. Red warning lights flashed through the windows as vehicles approached rapidly. Someone, or something, had detected the anomaly caused by the artifact's activation. Caliph turned sharply toward the noise. "They come for me," she said simply. Then, glancing back at Elias, she added, "Stay close, human. Whether you meant to summon me or not, our fates are intertwined now." And with that, she moved toward the door, ready to face whatever awaited them beyond. Elias hesitated for only a second before following, realizing his quiet life of solitude was over. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The cold mountain air bit at Elias's face as he followed Caliph into the wilderness, their footsteps crunching against freshly fallen snow. Behind them, the hum of military drones grew louder, their red lights cutting through the darkness like predatory eyes. Elias glanced over his shoulder, panic rising in his chest. "They're gaining on us," he shouted, clutching the artifact tightly under his arm. Caliph didn't respond immediately. Instead, she scanned the terrain with sharp, calculating movements. Her glowing armor reflected faintly off the trees, making her look almost ethereal in the moonlight. "Stay close," she said finally, her tone calm but firm. "I will protect you. For now." "For now," Elias echoed, incredulous. He wanted to argue, to demand answers, but there was no time. The drones were closing in fast, their mechanical whirring growing deafening. Without warning, Caliph raised her weapon, a sleek alien device that pulsed with energy, and fired a single shot. A brilliant beam of light erupted from the weapon, striking one of the drones midair. It exploded in a shower of sparks, sending fragments raining down around them. "Move," Caliph commanded, grabbing Elias by the arm and pulling him forward. They darted between trees, dodging falling debris as more drones closed in. Elias stumbled several times, his breath coming in ragged gasps, but Caliph never slowed. She moved with precision, every step deliberate, every movement efficient. After what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, they reached a narrow ravine hidden beneath thick foliage. Caliph pressed herself against the rocky wall, motioning for Elias to do the same. The drones hovered above, searching blindly for their targets. For a moment, everything was silent except for the sound of Elias's pounding heart. When the danger passed, Caliph turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You're slow," she said bluntly. "If we are to survive this, you must learn to adapt." Elias bristled at her words. "Adapt? You think I asked for any of this? I'm just a scientist. I don't know how to fight or run from killer robots." Caliph studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "Perhaps not. But ignorance does not excuse recklessness. Your actions have consequences, not just for yourself, but for your entire species." Her words stung, but Elias couldn't deny their truth. Still, frustration bubbled inside him. "And what about you?" he snapped. "You show up out of nowhere, tell me I've summoned you, and then drag me into some intergalactic mess I don't even understand. How am I supposed to trust you?" Caliph's gaze hardened. "Trust is earned, human, not given freely. If you wish to survive, you would do well to focus less on blame and more on learning." Despite her harshness, Elias noticed something in her voice, a flicker of curiosity, maybe even respect. She wasn't just dismissing him, she was challenging him. Slowly, his anger began to fade, replaced by determination. Maybe she was right. Maybe he needed to stop seeing himself as a victim and start figuring out how to handle the situation. As they continued their journey deeper into the wilderness, Caliph began sharing bits of information about her people, the Zenthuri. She explained that they were warriors, yes, but also scholars who valued balance and harmony above all else. "Every action has weight," she told him. "Every choice ripples outward, affecting others in ways you cannot predict." Elias listened intently, absorbing her words. Though her teachings often felt like lectures, he couldn't deny their wisdom. For the first time since meeting her, he started to see glimpses of humanity in her, moments when her stern exterior cracked just enough to reveal something softer underneath. By the time they stopped to rest near a frozen stream, Elias found himself thinking differently about their partnership. They weren't friends, not yet, but perhaps they could be allies. As he watched Caliph study the stars above, he realized she was just as lost in this strange new world as he was. And maybe, just maybe, together, they could find a way forward. But as peaceful as the moment seemed, both knew the real challenges were only beginning. Somewhere out there, forces far greater than either of them were watching and waiting. The next morning, Elias woke to the sound of Caliph's voice. She stood near the edge of their makeshift camp, her glowing armor catching the first rays of sunlight as she spoke quietly into a small palm-sized device. It hummed faintly, projecting holographic images of stars and galaxies that flickered in midair. When she noticed Elias stirring, she turned off the device and approached him. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. Her tone was serious, leaving no room for argument. Elias rubbed his eyes, still groggy from the restless night. "About what?" he asked cautiously. Kelith crouched beside him, placing the artifact on the ground between them. Its symbols glowed softly, pulsing in rhythm with the rising sun. "This object you activated, it is not just a relic. It is a beacon tied to the cosmic accord, an ancient agreement among starfaring civilizations." Elias frowned, trying to process her words. "What kind of agreement?" "One that ensures balance across the galaxy," Kelith explained. "Civilizations must act responsibly, respecting the resources and lives of others. Those who disrupt this balance incur a debt, a responsibility they must repay." Elias stared at the artifact, dread pooling in his stomach. "You're saying I activated something that put humanity in debt? To aliens?" Kelith nodded. "Your species has been reckless, consuming resources, polluting worlds, expanding without thought for consequences. These actions have gone unchecked for centuries. By activating the beacon, you unknowingly took on behalf of humanity the debt owed to the Accord." Elias felt a wave of anger rise within him. "That's insane. I didn't ask for this. How can one person be held responsible for all of humanity?" "You were chosen because you touched the artifact," Kelith replied evenly. "Its creators designed it to bind individuals to cosmic obligations. Whether by chance or design, you are now humanity's representative." The weight of her words hit Elias like a punch to the gut. He slumped back against the tree, overwhelmed. "So what happens now? Do we pay this debt somehow? What does that even mean?" Kelith hesitated before answering. "You will undergo a trial, a test overseen by the Accord. If you succeed, humanity will be granted membership in the Accord and allowed to continue its journey among the stars. If you fail," she trailed off, her expression grim. "What?" Elias pressed, his voice trembling. "What happens if I fail?" "Humanity will be quarantined," Kelith said bluntly. "Cut off from interstellar contact forever. No travel beyond your solar system. No trade, no alliances, no future among the stars." Elias swallowed hard, the enormity of the situation sinking in. Quarantine wasn't just punishment, it was isolation, a death sentence for progress. "And if I agree to this trial, what then? What am I supposed to do?" "You must prove humanity's worth," Kelith said. "Show that your species is capable of growth, responsibility, and cooperation. The trials will challenge your intellect, empathy, resolve, and morality. They will reveal who you truly are." Her words lingered in the crisp mountain air. Elias looked at her, searching for any sign of doubt or mercy in her gaze. But there was none. Only determination, and perhaps a hint of hope. "I'll do it," he said finally, surprising even himself. "If it means saving humanity, I'll take the trial." Kelith studied him carefully, her green eyes piercing. "Be warned, human. This path will not be easy. Enemies within the Accord may seek to sabotage you. Some believe humanity is unworthy of redemption. Then I'll prove them wrong," Elias said firmly, though his hands trembled slightly. Kelith gave a small nod, almost imperceptible. "Very well. Prepare yourself. We leave for the trial grounds at dawn." As Kelith walked away to scout the area, Elias sat alone, staring at the artifact. Its soft glow seemed almost mocking now, a reminder of the burden he'd taken on. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of purpose, not just for himself, but for everyone back on Earth. He didn't know if he could succeed, but one thing was certain. He had no choice but to try. Above him, the sky stretched endlessly, filled with countless stars. Somewhere out there, the fate of humanity awaited. And Elias Vera would face it head-on. When Elias opened his eyes, he found himself standing on an alien planet unlike anything he'd ever imagined. The sky above shimmered with hues of violet and gold, while towering crystalline structures jutted out from the ground like frozen waves. Caliph stood beside him, her armor reflecting the surreal colors around them. She gestured toward a massive gate ahead, its surface covered in glowing runes that pulsed rhythmically. "This is the trial grounds," she said, her voice steady, but tinged with urgency. "Each challenge will test a different aspect of your character. Succeed in all, and humanity earns its place among the stars." Elias nodded, though his heart raced. He tightened his grip on the artifact tucked under his arm, drawing strength from its faint warmth. "Let's get this over with." As they approached the gate, it slid open silently, revealing a sprawling arena bathed in soft light. In the center stood two figures, aliens, their forms insectoid and angular, locked in fierce argument. Around them floated holographic maps displaying overlapping territories marked with conflicting symbols. Kelith stepped back, folding her arms across her chest. "Your first trial begins now. Resolve their dispute." Elias blinked, taken aback. "What?" "Just talk to them." "You must mediate," Calith replied sharply. "Diplomacy is a cornerstone of galactic harmony. Prove you are capable of it." Swallowing his nerves, Elias stepped forward. The aliens turned their multifaceted eyes toward him, antennae twitching. One spoke in a series of clicks and chirps, which translated into harsh words through a device on his belt. "These lands belong to my people. Their mining operations threaten our sacred sites." The other countered angrily, gesturing at the map. "Your claims are baseless. We have rights granted by the Accord centuries ago." Elias took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. Diplomacy wasn't exactly his strong suit. He was a scientist, not a negotiator. But failure wasn't an option. Slowly, he began asking questions, seeking common ground. Hours passed as he listened, reasoned, and proposed compromises. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the two sides agreed to share resources and establish protected zones for both parties. As the aliens bowed respectfully and departed, Calith stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "You passed the first trial, but there are more." The next challenges came swiftly, each one testing Elias in new ways. In one, he faced a labyrinth filled with shifting walls and illusions designed to exploit his fears. Memories of his late wife haunted him, her voice echoing through the corridors, urging him to give up. But Elias pushed through, reminding himself why he had to succeed. For Earth, for humanity. In another trial, he encountered a dying star surrounded by planets teeming with life. His task was to decide how best to allocate limited resources to save as many species as possible. It was agonizing work, forcing him to weigh lives against each other, but Calith guided him subtly, teaching him about balance and sacrifice. Throughout these trials, Elias noticed something remarkable. Calith was changing too. Her initial coldness softened slightly, replaced by glimpses of admiration. She began offering advice, not just as a mentor, but as a partner, sharing stories of her own struggles within the Zenthari order. But the trials weren't without danger. During one particularly harrowing test, shadowy assassins attacked, sent by factions within the Accord who opposed Elias's participation. Calith fought fiercely, her weapons slicing through the air with precision. Together, they defeated the attackers, their teamwork seamless despite their differences. By the time they reached the final trial, Elias felt stronger, not physically, but mentally. He understood now that the tests weren't just about proving humanity's worth. They were about discovering his own potential. And though the hardest challenges still lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: he wouldn't face them alone. Calith glanced at him, her green eyes meeting his. "Ready?" she asked simply. Elias nodded, determination burning in his chest. "Let's finish this." The final trial awaited Elias in a cavernous chamber deep within the alien testing grounds. The walls shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, casting eerie shadows that danced across the floor. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, its surface engraved with symbols eerily similar to those on the artifact Elias carried. Above it floated a glowing orb, pulsating with an energy that made the air hum. Kelith stepped forward cautiously, her weapon drawn but lowered. "This is the core of the trials," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "It will reveal truths you may not be ready to face." Elias frowned, gripping the artifact tighter. "What kind of truths?" She hesitated before answering. The artifact's creators left behind fragments of their knowledge, memories, warnings, and prophecies. By activating it, you've triggered access to these memories. Some are best left undisturbed. Before Elias could respond, the orb flared brightly, bathing the room in blinding light. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing alone in a vast desert under a blood-red sky. Kelith was gone, replaced by ghostly figures moving in the distance. As he approached them, the scene shifted abruptly. He saw flashes, an ancient civilization thriving among the stars, their cities gleaming like jewels against the void. But then came destruction. Massive, shadowy creatures emerged from the darkness, consuming entire worlds in seconds. These were the Voidspawn, parasitic entities that fed on life itself. The visions grew darker, showing desperate battles fought by the Zenthari and other races to drive the Voidspawn back into the abyss. And then Elias saw something even more chilling. The artifact wasn't just a beacon, it was also a prison. Its creators had sealed the Voidspawn away millennia ago, sacrificing themselves to ensure the galaxy's survival. But the artifact's activation had weakened the seal, awakening the Voidspawn once more. Suddenly, Kelith reappeared beside him, her expression grim. "You understand now, don't you?" she asked, her voice heavy with sorrow. "The Voidspawn were never truly eradicated. They've been waiting." Elias staggered back, overwhelmed by the revelation. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why keep this from me?" "I wanted to protect you," Kelith snapped, her composure cracking for the first time. "How do you prepare someone for the end of everything? For the knowledge that your actions may have doomed us all?" Her words stung, but Elias couldn't deny the truth in them. Still, betrayal burned in his chest. "You should have trusted me. We could have figured this out together." Kelith looked away, guilt etched across her face. "Perhaps, but there's no time for regret now. The Voidspawn are already here." Back on Earth, chaos erupted as strange phenomena began appearing across the globe. Massive energy surges lit up the skies, disrupting satellites and communication networks. Scientists scrambled to explain the anomalies, while governments declared states of emergency. Reports poured in of unidentified objects entering the solar system at impossible speeds. In the trial grounds, Elias and Kelith watched holographic projections of Earth's distress unfold. People panicked in the streets, military forces mobilized. Fears spread like wildfire. The Voidspawn's arrival was imminent, and humanity was woefully unprepared. "We can't let this happen," Elias said firmly, clenching his fists. "There has to be a way to stop them." Kelith placed a hand on his shoulder, her earlier tension giving way to resolve. "Then we fight. Together." For the first time since meeting her, Elias felt a genuine connection, a shared purpose that transcended their differences. Though trust between them remained fragile, they both understood what was at stake. Failure meant not just the loss of humanity, but the annihilation of countless species and civilizations. As they prepared to leave the trial grounds, Elias glanced at the artifact one last time. Its glow seemed dimmer now, as if drained by the weight of its secrets. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain: humanity's fate, and perhaps the galaxy's, rested in his hands. Together, Elias and Kelith stepped through the gate, ready to confront the greatest threat either had ever faced. Elias and Kelith emerged from the trial grounds into a scene of utter chaos. The once pristine alien planet was now bathed in an eerie red glow, its skies streaked with cracks that pulsed like open wounds. The Voidspawn had arrived, their massive forms writhing through the dimensional rifts they tore in spacetime. Towering tentacles lashed out, destroying everything in their path as smaller, shadowy creatures swarmed the ground below. Kelith immediately sprang into action, her weapon humming with energy as she unleashed a barrage of shots at the nearest void spawn. "We need to buy time," she shouted over the deafening roar of destruction. "The Accord must reinforce the seal." Elias stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the devastation. But then he remembered the artifact clutched tightly in his hands. Its creators had designed it not just as a beacon, but as a safeguard, a tool to combat the void spawn. Summoning every ounce of courage, Elias stepped forward, focusing on the artifact's pulsating light. "What are you doing?" Kelith demanded, glancing back at him briefly before firing another shot. "I'm activating it," Elias replied, his voice trembling but resolute. "If this thing can stop them, I have to try." Kelith hesitated, her green eyes locking onto his. For the first time, there was no judgment or impatience, only concern. "Be careful, human. The artifact's power comes at a cost." Ignoring her warning, Elias closed his eyes and concentrated. Memories flooded his mind. The ancient civilization that created the artifact, their sacrifices, their hope for future generations. He felt their voices urging him onward, guiding his actions. Slowly, the artifact began to resonate, its glow intensifying until it illuminated the entire battlefield. The void spawn recoiled, their forms shuddering as if burned by the light. Encouraged, Elias pushed harder, channeling all his strength and humanity's collective will into the artifact. Images flashed in his mind. Earth's bustling cities, its diverse cultures, its endless potential. He thought of his late wife, her smile giving him strength. He thought of Kelith, who had taught him about balance and responsibility. And he thought of everyone counting on him to succeed. But the strain was immense. Pain coursed through Elias's body as the artifact drained his energy, threatening to consume him entirely. Sensing his struggle, Kelith rushed to his side, placing her hand on the artifact. Her own power surged into it, amplifying its effects. "You cannot bear this alone," she said firmly. "Let me help." For a brief moment, their connection deepened. They weren't just warrior and scientist. They were partners bound by a shared purpose. Together, they poured their strength into the artifact, creating a barrier of pure energy that pushed back against the void spawn. The creatures howled in fury, retreating into the dimensional rifts. But sealing them away required one final act. Kelith turned to Elias, her expression soft yet determined. "This is where our paths diverge," she said quietly. "You've proven yourself worthy, human. Now finish what we started." Before Elias could protest, Kelith stepped away, raising her weapon. A blinding surge of energy erupted from her body, merging with the artifact's barrier. The rifts collapsed, trapping the void spawn inside. As the light faded, Elias realized Kelith was gone. Her form dissolved into the artifact itself, becoming part of its eternal power. "No," Elias whispered, falling to his knees. Tears streamed down his face as grief washed over him. But amidst the sorrow, he felt something else. Pride. Kelith had given everything to protect the galaxy, leaving behind a legacy of sacrifice and unity. As the surviving members of the Accord arrived to stabilize the area, Elias stood tall, clutching the artifact close. Though Kelith was gone, her spirit lived on, not just in the artifact, but in the hope she inspired. Humanity had been tested, and it had risen to the challenge. Elias looked up at the repaired sky, vowing to honor Kelith's memory. The battle was won, but the war for harmony among the stars had only begun. The aftermath of the battle left Elias standing alone on the alien planet, the artifact glowing faintly in his hands. Its light was softer now, almost peaceful, as if acknowledging the sacrifice that had been made to restore balance. The skies above were clear once more, the cracks sealed, and the void spawn banished back into their prison. But the cost weighed heavily on Elias's heart. Kelith was gone, her presence, her strength, her wisdom, all reduced to a memory etched into the artifact she had given her life to protect. As members of the Accord arrived to assess the damage, they found Elias silent and somber, staring at the horizon. Their expressions shifted from suspicion to respect when they realized what he and Caliph had accomplished. "You have done well, human," one elder said, his voice low and reverent. "Your species has earned its place among us." Elias nodded numbly, unable to find words. Recognition felt hollow without Caliph by his side. Still, he understood the significance of the moment. Humanity's survival depended not just on technology or power, but on cooperation, empathy, and courage. He had proven those qualities could exist within his kind, an achievement worth celebrating, even amidst loss. Back on Earth, news of the Voidspawn's defeat spread quickly, though details remained vague to avoid panic. Governments worked tirelessly to repair damaged infrastructure, while scientists studied the strange phenomena that had preceded the attack. People began looking to the stars with renewed hope, inspired by stories of humanity's role in saving the galaxy. For the first time in years, unity seemed possible. Elias returned home weeks later, carrying the artifact with him. It no longer pulsed with energy. Instead, it rested quietly, like a relic of a distant past. He kept it close, a reminder of everything he'd endured, and everyone he'd lost. His lab became a sanctuary where he reflected on Caliph's teachings, poring over notes and sketches late into the night. Slowly, he began working on new projects aimed at fostering collaboration between humans and other species. One evening, as he stood beneath a star-filled sky, Elias whispered softly, "Thank you, Caliph. You called me, and I answered." Though she wasn't there to hear him, he knew she would approve of how far he'd come. Her legacy lived on, not just in the artifact, but in the shared future she had helped forge. Years passed, and Elias became a symbol of unity, traveling across worlds to promote peace and understanding. He often spoke of Caliph, sharing her story with anyone who would listen. Her name became synonymous with bravery and selflessness, inspiring countless others to follow in her footsteps. On a quiet night decades later, Elias stood on a hill overlooking Earth's capital city, now a hub of interstellar diplomacy. Lights twinkled below, mirroring the stars above. He held the artifact one last time before placing it in a secure vault, ensuring it would never be misused again. As he turned away, he felt a sense of closure, a bittersweet mix of sorrow and pride. The galaxy faced challenges ahead, but humanity was ready. Together with the Accord, they built bridges where there had once been walls, forging alliances that spanned light years. And through it all, Elias carried Caliph's lessons in his heart, knowing that true progress came not from conquest, but from connection. Underneath the endless expanse of stars, humanity took its first steps toward a brighter future, one guided by hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the face of adversity.